Hello, Jeff. Welcome, everyone. If you're just joining us, we're asking, hi, Karen. We're just asking everyone to rate yourself on the llama scale. How are you feeling today? You can either pop it in the chat or shout it out or just think about it quietly. That's up to you.
Yeah, it's totally optional.
We'll just take another minute or so as everyone gets settled here.
I've been really thinking about this llama thing. I think I'm a two. Yeah.
You're a 2 today.
Yes, I'm trying to put my own ideas about what the faces of the llamas mean. So
Oh, we have another number 6. We have an
Okay.
8.
Nice.
I like the 8. Yeah, I think 7. That one is a good one too. That side eye, like a little skeptical, maybe. Hi, Pam. Welcome, everyone.
So nice to have you all here. See Madonna. We're going to get started. It's noon. Welcome so much. Welcome everybody to our Creating Community in Online Spaces. This is part of the Stender School of Leadership, Business, and Professional Studies. And Joe, were you going to provide a little?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us for another webinar. I'm Joe. I'm an admissions counselor at the College of St. Scholastica, and I work with the Stender School. We're talking about creating online spaces, creating community within online spaces today, which is kind of an obviously relevant topic as we're all here right now. Super relevant in the last few years. If this is something that kind of resonates with you and you want to learn more about, or a lot more about, or you want to join a new online community, this is my segue of the day. So very proud of myself for this. We have some programs within the Stender School that I would encourage you to check out. So for those in the business community or those who are working in education, we have programs for all levels, those who are maybe looking for different teaching licenses, those who are looking to add a master's degree, or even a doctorate degree. We do have a doctorate of educational leadership program that we created a few years ago that we're pretty excited and proud about. So what I will do is I'll post a link to the Stender School programs and my info in the chat here. I would encourage you to check them out when you get a chance. Spread the word. We do rely pretty heavily on referrals at CSS to fill our programs and keep them going. So check them out. And if you have questions, just reach out to me at any time and we're happy to chat with you. But I will pass it back to Amy and Chery. Thanks, everyone.
Well,
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you. We're both really excited that you're here today, and we will introduce ourselves, but we want to launch a poll first of all. Let's see if it came up. Oh, my poll ended. This is a short answer poll. It is anonymous. And we'd like to know a little bit more about maybe why you're here today. And this is optional, but if you are able to, you can let us know a little bit about why you chose this webinar today. And Amy, is this showing up for you okay?
I am not seeing it. Is anyone else seeing it?
I'll relaunch the poll. Okay, there we go.
Now I can see it.
All right. So if you're able to, maybe you could let us know why you chose this webinar today. And while we're waiting for those results to come in, we'll let you know what we're going to cover today. So our agenda, we're going to start with some welcome and introductions. We'll go over norms. We're going to talk about the what, the why, the how, and provide a little closure about all related to creating community and online spaces. So I'm going to close the poll here in just a couple of seconds. We have like, we're having a nice response, and it's okay if you can't quite get to it. Some of you might be at lunch and you're just listening right now, and that's okay too. So we'll end the results and we'll take a look at what our results are. And I am wondering if you can see the results. There we go.
All exciting. Support ongoing pertinent options offered by CSS, leading teams via Zoom, not feeling community, finding people to talk with finding people to talk with as a completely online student off campus, interacting virtually, creating online spaces. Oh, this is exciting. CEU credits, online teaching facilitator looking for new and fun ways. Work for a fully remote team and always welcome new ideas and building stronger relationships. Appropriate participant in a community, online and otherwise. All kinds of exciting reasons for joining. This is wonderful. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. And it's really fun for us to see why you're coming, to make sure that we're addressing your needs as well. And you can see what the other folks here today are hoping to gain. We're going to start with some introductions so you know who's facilitating. So hello, everybody. I'm Chery Lucarelli. I chair our doctorate and graduate education studies programs. And there's my email. I believe we'll send you a copy of the slide deck as well. And we are recording the session today. I've been at the college for over 20 years, and primarily I've worked in I don't even know how long, online spaces. In fact, I started in online as an adjunct when online was a lot different in the 90s. It's so much fun, personally, I think. And all of my programs are online. So I'll just turn it over to my colleague.
Hi, I'm Amy Murzyn. I'm the director of our Master's of Education program and our special education programs. So like Chery, the programs that I work with and for are all fully online. I've been with St. Scholastica for 7 years now. And done online for maybe 9-ish years, but I can say that my journey is it's ongoing, but I feel like I know a lot more now than I did when I started this 9 years ago. So I'm excited to talk about some of those pieces with you and talk about how we can participate in community and how that might look differently than maybe some of the pieces you experienced because of COVID and that emergency response. This is a way to enhance that, I think, and show that it can be fun and engaging and exciting. Again, my email is also on the bottom. And we're hopeful that we can connect outside of this space as well. And so part of what that work looks like and part of the things that we want to talk about is just the lenses that we come from. So Chery and I are both going to be popping in and out of here, but as we both mentioned, we're faculty here at St. Scholastica. And for me, my background before I started here was in special education. So I come through a lens of equity and ensuring that things are accessible. I think about online spaces as educational spaces, but also as leadership spaces and engaging spaces. Go ahead and pop in anytime, Chery.
Yeah, we both strongly believe in the ideas of building community.
Mm-hmm.
And we have worked really hard to do that intentionally in online spaces. And I'm reminded too that our work in online spaces, and especially in working in webinars and in Zoom, we're still new. It's still really in its infancy, but both of us think about belonging and community a lot in all of the spaces that we work in, whether it's over COVID, I had to gather my family together, and maybe you did too, through Zoom. And I thought a lot about that. Like, what does that look like in informal spaces? And we both researched this. This is an area of research for us. We care deeply about what does online look like. Both of us believe it can be really robust and engaging if it's done with intentionality. We're still learning. I mentor others in this space, and I believe I'm working hard to be a designer in lots of space, and I'll be able to talk a little bit about that. What else did I forget, Amy? Anything?
No, I think that that still learning piece is an important piece, and just that we do come from this both from our personal experiences and then the work that we do in the area of research related to online spaces. So we're bringing in kind of a mix of both, I think, today.
Yeah.
And one of those things that we want to talk about is bringing in our norms, and you'll see some of this later on in our session today. But one of the things that we think is really important is just kind of setting the stage for what our time together looks like and setting out some norms. So we want to come in assuming good intentions of with and about everyone. We're all learning right now. We're going to make mistakes and missteps. We want to be mindful of our language. We want this to be an inclusive space where everybody feels comfortable. And we know that in a 1 hour session, that's going to take a little bit, but that's our goal and our hope. Please utilize the chat. This is, when you're in an in-person session, sometimes you lean over to your neighbor and you tell something or you share something or something really resonates with you. In an online space, we feel like that's what the chat is for. And also feel free to pop a question into the chat if you have one. Cameras are optional, and I appreciate that I see some cameras on, some cameras off. It's lunchtime in a lot of places. We're all busy. We don't, you've got different things happening around you. So use your camera if you want, or turn it off if you'd rather. And in this context, we're asking to raise your hand to speak, just so that we can ensure that all voices can be heard. In other spaces, we've failed to maybe put that practice into place, and we've talked over each other. So this is not a way to micromanage you or tell you that you cannot speak. It's just really a way to ensure that we can hear everybody speak. And even with the way our pictures pop up, we don't always see everybody. So interjecting can sometimes be more difficult in an online space as well. So just putting that piece out there. It's not a micromanagement tool, because you're all clearly adults and you know how to manage yourselves, but that's why we picked that piece.
And you should also know we will have time at the end of this
Mhm.
for questions. We have devoted time at the end. As we think about those norms for today, we intentionally chose those. We want our tone, we hope, is fairly conversational, informal. Again, camera's optional for lots of reasons. Amy and I even do that in classes we teach. There are times when we might be intentional about whether we're going to have cameras on or not. We will have polls. There won't be breakout rooms today. We again welcome the chat. We're all coming from different backgrounds and experiences, but I would argue that all of us have probably experienced now online something. And COVID kind of disrupted how we work, how we play, how we gather. And so hopefully we all have those common experiences, although some of you might have practice facilitating, some of you might be new to facilitating. So Amy and I thought about all of those things. We will be using a Google document later, and you might decide you just want to listen. Some of you might want to participate, and all of you are welcome today to this webinar. And that's why we say come as you are. We're going to start with this. We'd like you to think back to the last online meeting or gathering you had. Maybe one of these pictures evoke a certain feeling for you. And we're going to jump into our next poll. Okay, so we want you to think back to your last online meeting or gathering. And we want you to think about what feelings or assumptions do online meetings or gatherings evoke for you. Okay, and we'll jump into the poll. My polls aren't coming up for me.
You want me to try to launch it?
You give it a try. Yeah, I can't get it.
Oops, I have to stop sharing the first
There we
one.
go. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. I think I can do it now.
you got it? Okay.
For some reason,
Excellent.
I was stuck a little bit. So what feelings or assumptions do online meetings or gatherings evoke for you? And this will be, again, a short answer. You could just think about it. I don't know if people are seeing the poll. We don't have any. There we go. All right. A couple of responses.
This takes a minute to connect, maybe.
Yeah. I need to go back and look at these pictures for a minute because they make me smile.
Well, for those of you that know me, I did not put the dog picture up there.
Yeah, I know, yeah, yeah, people might wonder. Okay, we'll just go just a few more seconds and then we'll end the poll and we'll see what our results are. All right, we're going to end the poll, and obviously you can continue that conversation in the chat if you'd like. And we're going to view the details. So we have some, I'm noticing equal parts dread and excitement. It's convenient. People are asking questions. Will they be on task? Will they be off or on camera? Yeah, very good. Some people feel some apprehension about them. Is it going to be worthwhile? Is it going to be disappointing? Okay.
And when there's one about breakout rooms too, putting on a spot in the breakout rooms if you're not provided with the info to think about ahead of time. It's a good
Okay.
one.
Very good. Yeah.
Active,
So you
fun,
might be
and
noticing,
engaging.
yeah.
Mhm.
So you might be noticing some other responses. You can see we have a bit of a mixed response, which I think is really interesting too. And I think we don't need to answer this, just think about it. What are the experiences that brought you to those feelings and assumptions? Could be a recent experience. It could be experiences you had prior. And we'd like you just to maybe hold that in your mind as we progress through our webinar today.
And one of those responses that was resonating with me was that engagement and, you know, trying to stay engaged and maybe moving off, you know, losing interest or drifting off for a minute. So again, thinking about that and what causes that and what keeps you motivated and interested. And I think that can also be something that happens in person too, or, you know, in a physical space and not just in an online space. But again, we're focusing on what some of these things look like in our online spaces. So we're defining some terms for asynchronous versus asynchronous, and we see these terms tossed around a lot. Those of us that are teaching in online spaces use these all the time. But synchronous, we're talking about real time, things happening at the same time, things happening in the moment. Generally, they occur simultaneously. They can be in person, on the phone, in video, even chat can be considered synchronous because we're all interacting at the same time. And that tends to be faster. So if you want something that's more of an immediate response, we may move to that synchronous piece. Then we also have asynchronous that occurs over a period of time. We don't typically see this in person. It's maybe a follow-up. It's something that's not as time sensitive and it does not require an immediate response. So these are what we are, how we're defining some of our terms for use today. And then we're talking about defining online community. So today our goal is to talk about building and then increasing that online community. So we want to know that it's also a social community, it's a virtual community, it's an internet community, but it's online. We're a group of people, we've got a common interest or a purpose, and we're going to be interacting with each other. So those are the two primary definitions of the work that we are focusing on today. Did I forget anything?
No, I think it's great. And just to extend that idea, Priya Parker, who I follow a lot, who's written recently a book about the art of gathering, helps define community as any time 3 or more people come together for a purpose. Typically, there's a beginning, middle, and end. It may be a moment in time, like even today, we are a community today. And your purpose may also include coming together for fun. Not that fun can't be part of other types of gathering activities, but some examples could be formal or informal gatherings. They could be meetings, webinars like today, a book group, could be an appointment, could be friends coming together, a town hall, an event, or even a board meeting. All of those would be examples of online community if they have the online component. Obviously, you can do these in person, but for the purposes of today, we're really talking about what does this look like in an online space in a synchronous way.
And so specifically, our webinar today is structured as a synchronous session that's via video. We're online, it's interactive. So we've done some polls so far, we've done some thinking, we've done our llama. We're a group of people that have that common shared interest, and that is building community in an online setting. So this next pause and think then is just imagining that you're at your most recent meeting. Where did you find yourself most engaged? And then where did you find yourself tuning out? So again, just thinking a minute and kind of holding that space. So what brought you to your assumptions? What brought you joy or maybe not so much joy? And then where did you find yourself most engaged? So those are the pieces that you're holding in your space or holding space for as we move forward here.
Yeah. And as and how did that feel? Because anytime, I would argue, some of you here today are already probably doing some work in facilitation or hope to facilitate an sense of online community, is that Priya Parker would say that anytime we bring a group of people together, we have a responsibility to take care of those who are participating. Therefore, we need to design with intention, and we need to work to try to create a safe space for all. So that's a little bit of the why. And why really does that matter? Because we all have a human need for community and belonging. There's tons of research to show, we didn't cite all of that here, but we also know when people feel engaged, when they feel a sense of community and belonging, we're able to increase learning aptitude or engagement. That in a work setting, our folks who feel like they have a sense of community and belonging often have increased motivation. They may retain in that workspace longer. There's also just a better sense of well-being, and as I noted earlier, a sense of engagement. So the why is really comes down to a human need for us all of this sense of community and belonging.
Which then has us circle back to that another question about thinking about that time where you gathered with others and you really felt that sense of purpose, joy, and belonging. Was it a formal session? Was it an informal session? What was it about that gathering time that brought you that joy, that brought you that sense of belonging? And that's what we're trying to recreate here in our online communities, because there is that assumption that that can't happen, but we have some research and feedback to tell us otherwise.
Yeah. So circling back to this idea of design and intentionality. So a gathering can shape community. And one can argue, and there's research to show that without purposeful design, gatherings can actually do the opposite of bringing people together. People can come together in a lot of spaces and actually feel quite alone. So as somebody who's trying to shape a sense of community and belonging, if that's you and you're facilitating, I would argue, Amy and I would argue, it's important for you to be thinking about this all the time. Like, what am I doing to help shape this community so that folks can feel welcome and folks can feel like they're part of the community? And a lot of this is contextual. We know this webinar is a 1 hour together. So we were really careful about what we were going to do or not going to do. On the other hand, there might be times when I know I'm bringing people together over a longer period of time, and therefore I might design or create some intentional aspects that might be different than today. So again, bookending the why, this idea of belonging, which means you're feeling welcomed and honored so you can be your full self, so that you feel safe to share, so that you can collaborate, you feel safe to cooperate, you feel like you're able to fully engage, and there's a sense of safety. Facilitators can also just, can work really hard to create a welcoming space. And folks, for whatever reason, still may not feel totally welcome. But it is important for facilitators to at least try to do this, I would argue, for all of the reasons we've tried to point out.
And just one of the things that Chery and I talked about as we were planning is the lack of planning or the lack of design is also a design, right? If not paying attention to or not thinking about some of these pieces is also a design. I mean, and you may be getting, like she said, that, you have these gatherings and people still don't feel as part of a group. So that is also a part of the design, is the not design piece and not being intentional. I think that is a running theme, is that intentionality of a lot of things. So thinking about the how then, so we've talked about why, we've talked about some definitions, we talked about why, and now this is really kind of the meat of it. It's like, how do we do that? How do we engage in these communities that people feel welcome, they feel a part of, they want to participate, they want to engage, they're not tuning out, they're not thinking, another meeting, right? And so these are some of the considerations. So we're going to talk about how considerations, logistics, implementation, and then share some examples of what that looks like. So the first one is consideration. So one of the things, not one of, there's many things that we want to consider. Who is the group that I'm bringing together and how well do they know each other? So we bring people together for a lot of different reasons. We're faculty at the college. Some of our colleagues are here and have been in meetings with us, but we all come for different reasons, whether we're teaching a class or it's a program meeting or a department meeting, a college-wide meeting. But that's really does need to be something we think about as we're planning. How often will we come together? As Chery mentioned, this session we're coming together one time. So what we do here looks differently than with the group that we're going to meet with weekly or monthly or bi-monthly. What is appropriate for today's gathering? So today we decided, it's not appropriate to do breakouts. We like breakouts, but on the first meeting in 1 hour, it doesn't seem appropriate. It might feel like we're put on the spot. We're not going to have a chance to build a deeper connection that might make us feel more comfortable in these breakout sessions. We're starting that connection today, but we're not going to be there yet where we feel like, hey, let's go to a breakout room. What is the purpose of our gathering? Do people know what that purpose is? And one of the things that I have, and I guess I don't know if it's going to be on this slide or another slide, but thinking about the names of things, the titles of things. So this is called a webinar, but it's also titled, building community. So it's kind of an oxymoron in a way, because webinar implies that you are listening passively, or maybe that's just my definition of webinar. So I had to rename activities in one of my programs. I called them webinars, but I wanted students to come and I wanted them to engage. But a webinar doesn't necessarily connotate that, right? That's not the message that I'm sending. So even being purpose, determining the purpose and then making sure that people that are attending understand that purpose. And then thinking about who has that perceived or real power in this space. So again, we facilitate meetings with full-time faculty, with our part-time or adjunct faculty, with admin, with directors, and who does have power in that space, who has perceived power, who feels like they have a voice or who should have a voice. All of those pieces need to be considered as we're thinking about community and our meetings and how we set up groups and how we set up these interactions. Logistics, creating our meetings, setting up the invitations. So that is part of, so I think that could lead back to that title of your meeting as well, meeting, webinar, info session, whatever it is. Who is hosting it? Like these are like some things. So I'm sending out an invitation. So in theory, I'm the host, or Eric has helped us with the invitations here. Chery and I are the hosts. Eric's helping. Joe is a part of this as well. Thinking about who's managing the chat. So you may have noticed Chery and I both are popping in and out of the chat, but somebody needs to be watching that chat so we know what other people are saying, what needs they have. How do we make space for those informal conversations and online? And that is, I think, a legit consideration when we think about, we talk about water cooler or hallway conversation. Those are harder to do and facilitate here. And we'll have some examples of that later. But one of the things that you can try is a pre-entry space. So if you're hosting a longer meeting, you have a break time and people are coming back, is there a time to set up a separate breakout room so people that want to chat can pop in early, have a conversation, and then come back to that middle group? And the other things to think about is how do we close out our day together, our time together? And again, all of that is context specific, group specific, purpose specific. And then implementation. You saw it today, we put in some rules or norms, but also thinking about what is appropriate for this group now. So as we think about groups that are meeting once, Chery and I kind of talked about it and said, these are the things that we think are important for our meeting today. Other groups that are meeting more regularly might want agency in determining what some of those rules and norms are. That's also where you're going to see rituals or moments, things like, and Chery will share some experiences with you, but things that maybe you do every time you meet. Well, if we're only meeting one time, that's not really an appropriate time to set up a ritual because we're not going to see each other again. But if you're meeting with people regularly, those are pieces that are going to help bring everyone together. How do you welcome new members? So maybe somebody can't come every time, but they're going to be coming in and out. Again, we want to make sure that people feel comfortable. So thinking about and strategizing what that looks like, welcoming new members. How do you ensure that all voices are heard? So today we have the chat. We're asking you to raise your hand or put your put a comment in the chat. Yesterday, Doreen, another one of our colleagues, Chery and I met. There was 3 of us. We didn't need to raise our hands. We may use the chat and to interject so we don't lose an idea, but those are all the things that you want to think about in that online space. How will you use breakout rooms? Will you use breakout rooms? How do you invite others? How do you set expectations? And then what are your schedules? What does that time look like? And for some of us, we schedule 50-minute meetings now to give that 10-minute break time. If you are used to working online or you went from on ground to online, you had transition time for movement from one meeting to the next, and we're not seeing that as often on online meetings. So now I learned this from Chery, have been more purposeful about scheduling 50-minute meetings versus an hour meeting so that you got that transition time. And then how often are you scheduling these meetings? And does that make sense for your purpose, for your group, for the dynamics?
Yeah. One other thing I'll just say about schedules is also, I'm often meeting with people across different time zones. So be just purposeful and mindful about how that would work for groups who are in different time zones, and even making sure your invitation is clear. I've started learning 12 o'clock Central Time rather than just 12 o'clock. It's just a more inclusive way of bringing folks in together. So we're going to move to a couple of examples. I'm going to share an example that I've had recently. I'm part of a global alumni design thinking conversation group. I had some training in design thinking, and I have some certification in design thinking. And one of the things that the group, that the facilitators did, is bring alumni together over a whole year. We were all online, and this was a global group. There were people from all over the world participating. And it was an amazing sense of support and community. And that was the purpose of it. It was to help us all now think about our application of design thinking, help us address challenges, help us increase our knowledge and skills. But one of the norms we had is what you're going to see on the right side of the screen, which is we would share our name, our location, and time. And we were meeting again monthly all year. But every time we came on to the camera, we would rename ourselves. In our Zoom, I would do my first name. I would literally say I'm from the United States. So that's something also that I had to learn to do, because I'm not used to having to call out that I'm from the United States. But we had people from Germany, from Finland, from Canada, and then of course the time. Together, we decided we would prefer cameras on if you're comfortable, but knowing that that's okay. And we decided as a group that we would stay unmuted. And here's why. We wanted to hear the laughter, the ongoing discussion that sometimes is difficult to hear when everybody's muted. Now, I would say in a webinar, it makes sense that we're muted, but we had often a group of 10 to 12 people, and by unmuting, we were actually able to have that spontaneous laughter, that discussion. And folks agreed, like, unless there's some noise going on. I was just telling Eric earlier, I have somebody next door with a chainsaw cutting a tree down. And I was thinking, okay, in those kinds of spaces, I'd probably mute. We also were come as you are. If your kids jump into the camera, if there's pets, others are welcome. If you, this is your time to have breakfast. And all of this, we agreed together though. So it really did create a sense of safety for all of us. And even how we looked at each other, we used the gallery view so that we could see our whole group. So that's an example of an expectation, a norm. We did that together. We met for a year. So, and then one of our rituals was to end with what we called an ussie. Okay, so this is an image of how we ended every session. So we have 12 of these ussies. I'm in it, but it was just an amazing group of people. And we also did some asynchronous work where we were using, something like a Google Workspace where we were connecting. And then these ussies were also put in the slide deck. We often had folks who were coming regularly together and others who just couldn't make it every month, but they were always felt welcome. There was an idea that, again, come as you are, do the best you can. And to show up to the space. And then people were able to participate asynchronously, and they worked to come to the live meeting if possible. So again, an example of a ritual. We had others. Sometimes we all would turn our cameras and point to what was out our window, and we would take turns doing things like that as rituals. And in fact, it really did, I would argue, help bring us together. Before we move to this poll, Amy, I'm wondering if you have other, maybe we'll go back to some other examples. I was going to share one about one of the things I'm doing in one of my programs, the doctor program, is I'm hosting what we call Conversation Cafe. I'm going to just stop sharing for a minute so we can talk through some of these examples. And I bring folks together for just informal conversation. And then we ask students to come together and do some joyful writing together. And so we're coming together in an informal way. Part of our agenda is to maybe have a conversation starter, but this is outside of my regular class sessions. And I'm finding it to be a really lovely way to connect outside of an agenda for class. And Amy, I know you were going to maybe talk about some of the other things you've been doing in your learning communities.
Yeah, so in our courses, we are running in a couple of different programs, virtual learning communities. So it's an opportunity for students to connect with each other outside of the course and outside of the faculty. So we run what were formerly called webinars. Now we've called them seminars because again, we want them to be interactive, not a sit and listen. So the seminars are a time for the faculty to interact with the students, and everybody kind of interacts whole group. And then we also have created these virtual learning communities. So another opportunity for students to connect with each other outside of class, and they're doing them synchronously for the most part. Sometimes they have to do them asynchronously, but again, that's their time to connect with each other. We also do it in the doctorate program, professional learning communities. We have a loose agenda for them, things that we want them to engage with, content perhaps that we want them to engage with, but we also want them to be engaging with each other because we want students to feel connected. And I have received feedback from former students that have said they felt more sense of community in an online program with us than they felt in their on-ground programs. And I teach additional licensure for special ed. So students are coming back to get a special ed license. So specifically, they've said, I felt more community in this online program than I did in my initial undergrad program where I was on ground meeting my students or meeting my colleagues, classmates every day or every other day. So I think that was a testament to our need and our desire and our continued work on helping build community within our courses, within our classes. I've got some colleagues here that participate in meetings, hi Karen, outside of these spaces. And I think that, and Chery and I too, we try to model that as well. So Karen has seen the llama or a version of the llama. We've got a squirrel, but it's just a way for us to kind of check in with each other before we get started on our meeting itself. It's not just, hi, here's the agenda, let's get going. It is a time to connect. It is a time to just share in our experiences, talk about, either what's going well, where do we need support, something silly like the llama or the squirrel, but all different ways that we can create those touch points with each other that you might be used to in a physical setting, but now have to create in a different way in an online setting.
I will just say that sometimes those things can seem like a waste of time. But the research would actually push against that assumption. They actually are critical if you're trying to establish community, especially with folks who might be remote. And that thinking about how to bring remote folks together in a space, giving people time to connect in some fashion is actually not a waste of time. It's a really important use of your time. We all know we have too much to do in any agenda in any hour. And so it can feel like you have to think, okay, what am I going to give up from this meeting? But instead of thinking about what you're giving up, I would like you to switch your mindset and think about what you're getting. What you're getting is, I would argue, this go slow to go fast. Because if you have a group of people centering around a project, the fact that we can connect together, and that may take a little bit of time, but eventually that work becomes collaborative. You're going to hear more, if people feel safe, you're going to hear better ideas, right? So people are going to feel like, oh, I can share my thoughts and ideas here. One other thought before we go to the poll would be that that perceived sense of power, or real or imagined, is really something I would ask that you think about when you're bringing people together. Because you can put people in a breakout room. You could have a group of people who perhaps work on site, and you're bringing in somebody who works remote. It is potentially a concern that the person working remote may feel they might not feel as safe if we're not careful about helping that person create a sense of safety, because it could be the person who are co-located together already have an established bond. They're used to working together. And this can be an issue in any setting, in any work setting, any kind of a gathering space. So just be mindful of that. And I see we have a question in the chat, and I think we could come back to that at the end. We'll launch our next poll here.
And I'm just going to piggyback on one thing you said, Chery, about some of us that work in settings where some of our colleagues are next door to us and some of our colleagues are across the country from us. And I'm going to advocate, and I don't know what you're going to think, Chery, but if you have one person online, consider doing everyone online. I mean, I know that might seem counterintuitive, and maybe sometimes that doesn't work, but I think for me, as being both in the space and outside of the space, when you have half and half, it doesn't always feel inclusive for everybody. You might have, the facilitator might have their back to you because the camera is this way, but the people are this way. It might be hard to hear. Chery has graciously agreed not to put my giant face on a big screen when there's, I'm the only one online and everyone else is on ground. And so if you've got a projector in there, then you have one giant face on your screen. Like, all of those things can make it feel a little less safe. So that's just one thing to think about.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, there's so many little things that we've tried to do. I've launched the poll, which is, can you name, is there something you saw today that you thought where we modeled some form of community engagement with our, as part of our webinar? And got a couple of answers coming. I was thinking about, for a while, Amy, we'd go to a boardroom and, like you said, we'd all be meeting in person, but we'd have Amy, and she knew she was up on the big screen. And it was like, oh, so I've started, like you said, I just put you on my laptop. So like you're sitting right at the table with us. Yeah. And some of you might know what that feels like.
And even when it's a couple, sometimes it seems like sound can be a concern.
Yeah.
Knowing when to interject, like if you're online or in person, knowing when it's okay to interject, or not being able to read the room to be able to interject, or yeah.
It can be really difficult when you're the person online. That can be really difficult. We got a couple of chats. I'm going to share the results here to see what people thought. We'll view the details. Okay. We stop sharing the screen periodically. Acknowledge and mentioning, come as you are. Pause and okay. I'm reading through. I really thank you for noticing our intentionality. These are all the things that we were trying to do. So that's really helpful. And
I'm smiling at Sheila. Shoot, I needed a warning because I was mid-typing.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But that's a good one
That
that we
wasn't
didn't
good
have,
intentionality.
right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
good feedback. I'm sorry.
That's a good one that we need to add to our list.
We
Thank
will
you.
add, give people a warning. Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Feel free to share that in the chat too. So these were our intentional practices today.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted people to come in early. And I don't know about you, but there are other ways you could play music during that time. I read recently about having a little breakout room for those, like Amy mentioned, for folks to come in early to kind of just chat and have that water cooler conversation. Some people want just time to be quiet. I lean heavily into optional. I feel strongly about inviting people in and letting people participate as they feel ready to do. We don't always know the day that somebody had, or if they just need a minute to get themselves ready for the meeting. But I think thinking about this, having options is really helpful.
Agreed. And I was just chiming in on the chat too. The cameras, I think, has been a big one. And that I think was a learning curve for some of us. Like, you know, to be engaged, we have to see your face, but we know from being in in-person meetings, you can still be disengaged in a live session. So being able to see your face doesn't automatically mean you're engaged and actively participating in a meeting. So we've gotten over that one fairly quickly. And then the equitable piece of why people may or may not have a camera on, and not having to be the police of that, the monitor of that, and having to make those decisions. I don't want that job of being the monitor on what's a valid reason for having your camera off. This takes away all of that.
You know, and I think about, I've had times when I personally want to be in a meeting, I cannot have my camera on. Maybe I wasn't feeling good that day. Could be something else going on. I think we have to honor that we can always encourage cameras. We could talk about why. Sometimes in a breakout room in particular, it feels like a nice option. But today we know most of you are sitting. Some of you might be needing to multitask. Some of you might be in your car. We've had people come zooming in, and I think just talking about the why and why we're making these decisions is really important. We tried to ask polls and also tried to get you to do some pause and think to try to help keep you engaged. Obviously, that will work for some people, and it may not work for other people. So again, having a variety of activities, I think what's really important is setting those expectations, taking a little bit of time to do that depending on the gathering. Before I move on, what do you think, Amy? What am I forgetting there? Anything?
Agreed. And just that intentionality piece, you know, I think a lot of that does just revisiting what is the purpose? What is the purpose of the gathering? What do we hope to accomplish? And then all of that kind of helps drive some of those other decisions, but being intentional about those decisions. And I do like the music, Meg, thank you. Annotations. Yeah, we talked about annotations. Photos, those are fun ones. Yep. Sarah, I appreciate your comment too about the being a part of the community and being across the country. And Heidi, we did not forget your question on how much time to take. And then
we'll circle back to that.
Yeah. So additional practices that we may have mentioned, but today did not seem like the right type of setting to do these things, but do try breakout rooms, especially if you're going to have regular meetings with people. If you need input, we have found, and perhaps you have as well, depending on the group and the timing and the purpose, not everybody feels comfortable sharing in a large group setting. So once we get students, specifically our students, when we get students in small groups, we get a lot more conversation. Even our faculty, when we're doing different faculty meetings, we seem to get a lot more conversation in these smaller groups. And that may have to do with that perceived power dynamic. So breakout rooms are great. Back channel chats, I know that some people discourage that. They try to disable chats during meetings so that people can't chat privately to each other. I mean, people will find other ways to chat if that's but you're setting up an environment that will encourage that, right? Like that creates that community. You have that in an on-ground setting. Again, maybe people don't like to sit next to me at meetings, but I lean over, hey, did something really resonates with me. I want to talk about it. So figuring out how to set up those avenues to do that. Those pre-entry breakout rooms, we have not tried those, but I'm kind of intrigued by them. That kind of give you the opportunity to chat with your colleagues before having to move forward with your meeting, and then follow up the dynamic asynchronous communications. So you've had a meeting with people, a setting, you want to follow up with them, thank them for whatever. I send asynchronous communications out every Friday. I don't know how many people read them or are interested in them, but I, just to check in with my faculty that I work with. Hey, these are, this is what's happening with me right now. This is some fun fact or some piece of something that I learned that you might be interested in, and then here are some announcements. So just a way to follow up with people in an asynchronous way as well also helps to create and build that online community.
Yeah, and be willing to try something new, and we're
Mhm.
gonna do that. I see a student of mine in here today, and we've done this, but I'd like you to think about 3 or 4 words that are resonating with you from our session today. What's a few words that are resonating with you?
Oh, and I'll put
And,
it in the chat.
and I'm going to have you there, you're going to see a Google Doc come into the chat. And I'd like you to put those ideas on the Google Doc if you're willing and able. And again, always, this is optional.
And I'm just looking at the chat too, Karen. I like for the first of ongoing classes, a Google slide deck where each person puts a photo that means a lot to them in a way, as a way to introduce themselves. That's really powerful.
Really good ideas.
Sheila takes a leadership, students take on a leadership role in the meetings, monitor. Yeah, that's wonderful. It's nice to have a designated chat person,
Yeah.
regardless of your meeting.
Really appreciate these great ideas. So if you
Mhm.
want to keep putting those in the chat, meanwhile, if you could put 3 or 4 words or ideas that are resonating with you from the Google Docs been put in the chat. We'll see how that's looking. Good. You can see it's mostly anonymous, which is great.
Heidi, I've been thinking about your question, right? About how much time to spend with that check-in.
Yeah.
And I think it depends if it's
Yeah.
a group. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, because I have thoughts about it too. Yeah.
Does it say if it's a group that you're meeting with regularly? I think 25 minutes is too much. I mean, if
agree.
it's an hour-long meeting, 25 minutes is a lot, right? Because if you only have an hour, and I think that can create some like, we're going to spend the first half of this meeting just checking in. So what are some strategies for we've done like a whip around where everybody has like 1 or 2 words that they can share with how they're doing, just the simple, what's your, a temperature check for today. I think it depends on, again, the purpose of your meeting though, and what are you trying to accomplish?
I was just gonna weigh in on that too. Like if you're coming together, in a regular fashion, I think maybe the first time you do some community building, it might be a little bit longer. And then you need, there's also a frustration people feel if we're not getting down to business, but also creating engaging activities throughout your meeting. So people are building community in other ways. So it's not always just at the front.
And you were going to add something too, Heidi. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
you're fine.
No, I think that's really helpful. I think when we're working with people whose job is to engage with other people, no matter if I say just like how short it is, it ends up becoming like lots of discussion because they don't get to see each other between our meetings. And so I found that to be a really hard balance with the one small team I lead.
It's such a good question. People are obviously hungry for that community, which we talked about, in that sense of belonging. You might want to be strategic about starting a little bit early, 10 minutes for those who really want to have that connection. Do your best. Maybe you're already doing this, Heidi. So, but I'm hearing a hunger for wanting this sense of community. So,
well, others are hungry to move on.
yes.
So I'm going to try the opening 15 minutes early.
Yeah, so that's right, because you have to have the balance of being efficient and keeping the meeting moving. You're obviously coming together to, but you could in fact have an idea that needs discussion. We do this a lot with our team, people who are working with us, where we're presenting an idea. We go into a breakout room and we have a task where let's talk about this and let's come back and share. And even just through that experience, we're getting that that smaller sense of community, but it's really great. Okay, we have a couple more minutes and we're going to close this word word activity. We're going to create a piece of word art by using your words. Google allows this extension. I just learned about this. It's a word cloud generator. So what Google will do is take the words that you've written and will create a word cloud for us, which is coming over here. And you can see the word obviously meeting was the biggest word that was used most frequently, but you can also see some other words that were important to the group: of purposeful, dynamic, having this word power. So the words that are larger on here obviously were used more frequently from all of you. By the way, this is a really quick, easy extension that you can use with Google. I just learned about it, and it's just a nice way to get some. But you could switch the topic for this. Obviously, you could be, "How are you feeling today?" Give me 3 to 4 words and create a little word cloud around it. So,
Yeah, that was fun. This was my first experience with Google Word Cloud.
yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
And Sheila had one and 2 Jamboards for the
Yeah.
check-ins. I like that.
Jamboards are also a great way, and you can actually save them and go back to them. We've done that quite a bit. So for our wrap up today, we've started with what we were very specific about this. This is an online synchronous activity in with community. We know there are other ways to do community and other ways we can meet digitally, but this is very specific on online synchronous. We
Oh.
talked about the why.
Yes.
hope- Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
This one says both, so we're trying to figure out where both of us.
We're sharing the slide.
We're sharing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the why, I think, is the, why community and belonging are, we want that as humans. I think you did a really nice job, Chery, of talking about that earlier. Like we need that as humans. And even as an introvert, I have a big bubble, but we do want that sense of community and belonging. And so being able to replicate that or not even replicate, but create that in an online space is really important and really powerful, I think. So having that understanding of that why is helps us build that space.
We talked about the logistics, all the things that we should be considering, intentionality, implementation. And I'm just circling back even to what Heidi said about, she knows she needs to have that community, but she also maybe has to figure out the needs of the whole community, which is, I can't spend 25 minutes because others don't see that as valuable. But figuring out other ways then that the group, there could be people within that do need more community. Well, what could be done with that particular group? But no matter what, we all should be thinking about intentional design. When we don't think about it, we still are designing something.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to be clear about. Like, no design is a design choice. So, yeah.
And then, our model, hopefully you found our model today helpful, and our metacognitive talking through our model was helpful for you on the what, the why, and the how.
And so we have a couple minutes for questions, and we had some in the chat. Were there other questions? You could raise your hand if you'd like, put them in the chat. It's really fun to see all the comments. Oh gosh, what a robust chat group. Just so many good ideas in here. Yeah.
If nobody has any other questions, I do have a question for a different kind of group that I lead.
Sure.
So I lead community networks in addition to work teams. And so we expanded greatly because we're in a remote region. So it's really helped to be able to have the online. One idea that I've tried is using like phones to have your face on screen. So some of us are in the room and some of us are remote. But what's really missing is that conversation, the casual connections between two people that just happen when they bump into each other in the room. And that relationship building across agencies for people who don't see each other typically is one of the things that's really been missing. And so I'm just curious if you have any ideas for that.
That's so good, Heidi. And it's something that, because of the remote nature, how many people are we talking generally?
25 on average.
And are you getting together regularly in any fashion?
So we have a monthly meeting, and yeah, so 25 is our average across more than 12 agencies, but lots of different roles, all social service type related.
So I think in that kind of space, I think you must have an agenda you're trying to get through also. Yep. I think if there's any opportunity to start the meeting early and be really intentional about, I've sat in recently in a big group where we did almost a speed networking session. And if for people, there are some people, like for me, it's helpful to have everybody go talk to somebody about this for 5 minutes, and then you switch to another group. And you have to be realistic. Not everybody in those 25 are all going to get to know each other, but if they could even know a little bit of each of a subset, that will help. So I would try that. I would try in every single meeting to try to get some, is there some space where people in the space could talk about whatever's on the agenda, even in a small group for a while? And I would say, don't make those too short, because we need a little bit of buffer in Zoom. You need time to go into transition. 5 minutes from those settings is typically not enough. And then maybe do a quick report back or something, or have people capture their ideas on a Google Doc or something. I can't say that'll solve everything, but I do think it may help a little bit in terms of, instead of just one person talking and everybody's quiet, that can be very disconcerting as well. Ask the group up for ideas as well. That would be something. You say, I'm noticing this. What ideas do you have?
And I also wonder too, thinking about that, like you said, that pre-meeting space, even setting up breakout rooms within that pre-meeting space. If you're looking for that casual connection with some just even silly topics, or like if you're interested in gardening, go to this room. If you're just so people can find some commonalities, and that might be a way to spark conversation. But it happens pre-meeting. So then those that are really looking for that and want that have that opportunity. But then those that are like, nope, I'm fine just coming to the meeting, they're not feeling that pressure to engage in some of that.
Or even having the network share something they're most proud of over the last. What's
Yeah.
something you really want to share that's really going well? I think people would feel, and I'm really sorry, but we're at 1 o'clock. I will stay after here to answer questions, but I want to honor that we're at 1 o'clock. That's also a really good tip, by the way. You should try to end on time. Just jumped up, but I will stay after and answer questions. But Heidi, the fact that you're asking the question and just have a willing spirit to experiment a little bit, I think will help.
Thanks, Cheryl. I've got a number of ideas. Our annual strategic or planning is coming up in November, and this is one of the topics I want to address in our 4 hours, where we physically come together once a year. And so one of the things I want to do is, how are we creating new norms? But I want to try some things before that, to give us a chance to practice. So I've got some great ideas here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how it goes for you, Heidi. Please reach out. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. It was so lovely. Appreciate you spending your time with us today.
Yeah. Thank you all.
There was a question that got caught there, and I
Thanks,
only know because it was Madonna that asked it about the camera on off philosophy there.
Oh, yes. Okay,
Nice.
that's great, Madonna. Is she still here? We can talk about that.
Nope. I think she looks like she had to log out.
Okay, we'll
I don't
follow
know
up
if-
with her,
yeah,
though.
we could follow up with her.
Yeah.
We know where to find her.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say hi.